I have no idea. Hello, I'm John and this is Fun with Filmora.
Lights, camera, action!
Let's have some fun. One of my subscribers, Mixflix, said he'd like to use keyframes more. So I'm now going to do a tutorial on how to use keyframes in Filmora 12. You can use keyframes in earlier versions of Filmora, but you have so many more options in Filmora 12. I highly recommend downloading Filmora 12 and using the keyframe options in there, especially now as it's a free upgrade. Okay, let's dive right in and show you how keyframes work. But before we do, what is a keyframe? A keyframe is basically a stop and start point within a video that creates an action. Let me show you that in action. I'm just going to drag some stock media footage I've got from Pexels. I'll use this 4K video. I'll just keep the project settings. And let's just play the video first and see what it's like. Nice scene. With the water coming in and out and a few different colours in there. So that'll give us a good basis to show you how keyframes work. Let's go back to the beginning. Now, if we start at the very top right and use our video basic tab, you can open the tab by clicking on there if it's not already open. And the little diamond on the right hand side is how to add a keyframe. You can do it from the timeline by clicking on here. I prefer to do it within the properties box. This is the default workspace in Filmora 12, so you get to see your media, your video, and all the properties. So that's what I love about this workspace in Filmora 12. Okay, so if you click there, that adds a keyframe to the timeline. Because I clicked there to add a keyframe, it's added a keyframe on the other properties within the transform tab. So it's automatically added one keyframe to the scale, position, and the rotate. Right, we've added one keyframe. That sets the start point. We want to keep the video as it is for a few frames. So I'll click in a few frames. I'll now add another keyframe. You can do these individually if you want, but I prefer just to click the top one. It's easier, to be honest, in case you want to change scale, position and rotation, or you just want to do scale and rotation. You can do it because they're all highlighted. I'll show you that in a second. So we've added our second keyframe and now we want to do the action on the video. In this case, scale it up. I'll do that by dragging the scale bars, and I will also position it. Let's have a look. Let's move it up so we can just see the rocks. And I don't want to rotate it, I want to keep it like that. So what's happened now, once we go back to the beginning and play the video, see the way it's scaled in, which is great. Now we want to keep that scale for a few more frames, so we move in a few more frames on the video. We add another transform keyframe. Leave it like that. Now that's the start point of our action, don't forget. We don't change the scale here, because what would happen if we change the scale here, in fact let me show you. Let me just change that down to 140. What happens is, once you play the video, scales in, then immediately starts scaling down again. And we don't want that. We want to keep the video scaled up for a few frames. So I've just deleted that keyframe there by clicking on it and pressing delete on the keyboard. So let's go in, like I said, a few frames past this keyframe here. And we can see keyframes on the timeline there. Or you can actually click on one and you'll see it highlight here. There's a little arrow next to it that you can click on, and that'll take you to the previous keyframe. And again, you can click on the arrow there, takes you to the next keyframe. Or simply just click on each one as well. You'll know you're on the keyframe because it turns green. Okay. Now I want to keep this zoomed in shot, so I'll move in a couple of frames. I'll add a keyframe. I don't want to change any of these yet because this is the start point of our next action. I'll move in a couple of more frames. add a keyframe, and now this is where we will provide the action. I just want to scale it back down to its original 100%, and an easy way of doing that is simply by clicking on that little backward arrow there. That resets it back down to 100%. So let's play that and see what it looks like. Okay, so it zooms in, stays like that for a while, then zooms out. Now you notice it zoomed out a bit quick there. It stayed for a second, then zoomed out quicker. If we wanted it to zoom out slower, it's very simple. You click on the last keyframe, simply drag it across. So now you'll see that it zooms out slower, and again drag it even more, it'll start zooming out slower again, and you can see the scale going down here as it's zooming out, which is great, and the position as well. Great to see that. Okay, so that's the transform tab. Okay, so I'm now going to delete those keyframes by simply clicking on them with the mouse and pressing the delete key on your keyboard. Go to the next one, or the previous one, delete, delete, and get shut to the last one, delete. So we're now back to square one. We've got no keyframes there. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to add keyframes. I'm going to scale it up, reposition it, and rotate it all at the same time. So first thing we do is we add our first keyframe. Move in a couple of frames. We add our next keyframe, which is the action keyframe. The second keyframe is the action keyframe, don't forget. I'll scale it up. I'll reposition it slightly. And I'll rotate it. And you can see it's automatically creating those keyframes as I do it. So what will happen now when I play from the start, it scales, rotates, and changes position. And you notice it will stay like that until we do another action, if we want to do another action, which I do. So I'll go in a few more frames, I'll add another keyframe. Now don't forget, that's not the action keyframe, that will be the beginning of where the action will start. Go in a few more frames, add a keyframe, and this is where the action will end. Now we want to transform everything back down to 100%, and we do that by clicking on this backward arrow. Okay, we've also gone back to the original position and the original rotation by resetting everything. So our first keyframe is there, that's the starting keyframe. Our next keyframe is there, and that's the action keyframe. That changed the rotation, the scale, and the position. Our third keyframe, we wanted to keep it in that position, so that's our third keyframe and the start of our new action. And the fourth keyframe is where we added the new action, which was resetting everything back to scale, size, and position. So it now plays like this. Keyframe 2, keyframe 3, keyframe 4. Now you might think, again, they're a bit too close together. Don't forget, very easily, click on it, drag them across, and that will change all the timings of them. So let's play that again. So it comes in slightly slower now to keyframe 2, stays at that position and rotation. Keyframe 3 then starts the next action, and keyframe 4 stops that action. How fantastic is that? Nice and easy as well. It's great, isn't it? Okay, let's get shut of those keyframes. I'll delete them by clicking on them and pressing delete on the keyboard, very simply. And let's see what else we can do with keyframes. Right, let's close up the transform tab. Compositing, we can use keyframes on that as well. So let's add our first keyframe, move in a couple of frames, add our action keyframe, and we want to take that right down to 50% approximately. Move in a couple of more frames, add our third start action keyframe, and add our fourth keyframe, and we'll take the opacity back up to 100%. So this will give a nice fade effect. Starts to fade, stays there, then comes back full color. How easy is that? So you can use that in quite a few things on your videos, I'm sure I have in the past. Again, let's delete those keyframes. And let's see what else we can do. Okay, drop shadow. Now to use drop shadow, might be best if I drag a photograph or an image above the video. We have an image there, as you can see. I'll just scale that down. Okay, and now if I click on drop shadow, you'll see the drop shadow there. Yes, we can use keyframing on drop shadows as well, which is great. I'll start at the beginning. I'll add a keyframe on drop shadow, move in a couple of frames. I'll add another keyframe, then do the action. In this case, I will change the angle so it's right up on the top left hand corner rather than being on the bottom right. I'll move the distance away, and I'll change the blur slightly as well. Move in a couple of frames more. Add the third keyframe. Couple of more frames in. Add the fourth action keyframe. And I'll just reset that all back. In fact, no, I won't reset it back. What I'll do is I'll change the angle again to go over to the right. I'll make the distance smaller. You can't change color on this with a keyframe, by the way. If you change the color now, it'll be the same color throughout all of the image. You can't do keyframing on the color on drop shadow. And I'll change the blur back down as well to a solid. Okay, so let's play that out and see what it looks like. So it moves around again. Great little things you can do with these keyframes. I'm just going to delete that image because I don't think we need it anymore. Okay, and auto enhance. Now what auto enhance does is it tries to make your image look the best that it can. So if you look at the color here, click on auto enhance. It's supposedly enhanced some of the colors, although it's blowing the sky out a bit, but let's just use it as an example anyway. Sometimes it works on videos and images, and other times, in my opinion, it doesn't look as good. If you're not happy, just turn it back off. That's simple. But we can use keyframing on this as well. Get to the start of the video, add our first keyframe. Let's move in a couple of frames. We'll add our action keyframe, and we'll just do the auto enhance to, let's have a look, see if it makes any difference. It changes it ever so slightly. I'll take it down to 0. I've moved in a couple of more frames and add another keyframe, and then a few more frames and add our fourth and last action keyframe, and I'll take that up to 100. So you might see a subtle difference here because you don't really see that much in auto enhance. So let's play it and see if you can see any changes. Yes, very subtle changes, but in my opinion a complete waste of time. But it's there if you need it. It's just to prove that you can use keyframes on a lot of options within Filmora 12. Okay, let's delete those ones again. Don't forget, just click on it, press delete on your keyboard. Done. Right, so that's all the basic tab done. Let's go to mask, because we can actually use keyframing with masking tools as well. Again, I'll need an image to put on top, or in this case I'll actually put the image below. So I'll move the video up and put the image below. I'll make the image a bit longer by dragging the handle there, and I'll now add a mask here in the video, and I'll just use a basic, let's have a look, basic star shaped mask. Okay, leave it about that size and move it down slightly, and I just want to invert that so that we can see most of the video and just the image in the center there. Okay, I've moved in a bit. I'll add a keyframe to the star mask there. I'll move in some more frames, add our second action keyframe, and I'll rotate it slightly. In fact, I'll rotate it 360 degrees. Let's see what happens there. Now you can just simply type it in as well, which would have been easier to begin with. Okay, so we've rotated it 360. We'll go in a few more frames. Add another keyframe. Couple of more frames. Now our last action keyframe. And we shall reset the rotation back to 0. But we'll actually scale the star up a bit as well. And I'll move the position slightly up. Okay, so we've got our 4 keyframes there. We've got our first start keyframe, our second start of the action keyframe, our third keyframe, and our fourth keyframe. So let's see what happens there. When you start playing, you see it spins 360, stays like that for a bit, spins back, and scales up a bit. Great, so you can use it on masking. Fantastic. That can come in handy in quite a few things, to be honest with you. Can't think of one off the top of my head. But I'm sure there will be. Okay, let's delete those keyframes. I'll remove the image because we no longer need that. And I'll remove the mask as well because we no longer need a mask. If you haven't already downloaded Filmora, you can do so from the link in the description below. It's free to try, so why not give it a go? Okay, the next tab we're going to look at is AI Tools. Now this is a bit of a strange one really, and I'll show you why as we go through them. There's only 2 options in here where you can use keyframing, and that's chroma key and AI portrait. So let's look at chroma key, and to use chroma key we need something with a green screen. Chroma key is also called green screen, and what it does is it removes the green screen from the video so you can see through it to the background. They use it a lot in special effects films. So for example, you may see somebody running with a green screen behind them, but on the TV or in the cinema they'll be running with maybe a lion running after them, or something like that. I don't know where that comes from, but something like that. You get the idea. It replaces the background with a different scene. So to use this, we will first need a green screen video. Now I know stock media have some, so let's go to stock media. Let's go down to film stock, and you can see here one of the options is green screen. Let's choose this cinematic type of look, like a movie look. Now at the moment, because I haven't got chroma key activated, you can just see the bars of the film strip and a bright lime green coloured background. Once I flick on chroma key, that removes that, and you can see right the way through to the video behind. So that's what it looks like when you play it. Clever. I like using green screen. But how can we use it with chroma key? Well, to be totally honest with you, I have no idea, because the options you have within chroma key to use keyframes, I can't see what it does, because if we look at this image now, if we change any of these options, like the offset, right the way up to the top, right the way up to the bottom, nothing really changes. The tolerance, if you take it up to 100%, nothing changes really. If you take it right down, you get a white screen. That's all. So I don't know why you'd want to use that effect, to be honest with you. Also, edge thickness, it just changes the edges a little bit. I'll reset that. And again, edge feather, it just changes the edges again. I've got to be honest with you, I will just reset that back to all standards. I'll remove that keyframe that I put in on the green screen by pressing delete on the keyboard, don't forget. And I've got to be honest, I can't think of a way of how you would use keyframing in chroma key. If you know of a way, I'd love to know, or if you can do a little video of it, even better. But for me, I don't see how you'll be able to use it, to be honest with you. So the next one is AI portrait. Let me just turn off chroma key, and I shall delete that little green screen video as well. We don't need that anymore. And the next one is AI portrait. Now again, we will need an image with a person in, because AI portrait, what it does is it isolates the image of the person from the background, so it removes the background for you. So go to stock media, we'll go down to pixels, and let's search for somebody walking. That looks quite a good one. Okay, let's try that. I'll drag that onto the second track on the timeline. And now we're going to isolate this person here and remove all the background. And we do that by clicking on AI Portrait. And you can see straight away the background's been removed. So it looks like he's walking on the rocks. I'll just, I'll move him down a little bit actually. So he looks like he's walking on the rocks. Let's play that video just to show you what it looks like. He's not getting very far. Let's hope he doesn't go too far, he'll drown. Okay, so that's the idea behind AI Portrait. Now, how can we use keyframing with this? In AI Portrait, I can only see a way of using edge thickness, and I'll show you how we can use that. So let's get to the beginning of the clip, where we are. I'll delete that keyframe for now and start again. We'll add a keyframe. We'll take the edge thickness right the way down, and that will make the person disappear from the video. We'll move in maybe halfway on the video, add another keyframe, and then we'll reset the edge thickness again. And hopefully what that will do is it will make the person slowly fade in and appear. So let's try that out, see what it looks like. Okay, play it, go to the keyframes, and there we go, so it fades in. So I could understand how that could be useful in a video. Like I said, like a fade in, slow fade in effect. But edge feather, again, I can't think of a way or why you'd want to use that. So again, please, if you have any ideas, suggestions, or can show any examples in video, that would be great. Let me know in the comments below, please. Okay, so let's just knock off AI Portrait again, because we finished with that, and we'll delete the walking man video. Right, what's next? Okay, animation. Can't do keyframes here on animation. Let's go to the audio tab, and in the audio tab we can do keyframes only on the volume. So let's find a bit of music. Let's go to audio. What's that one sound like? Okay, let's try and find some music through the library. Play this one, see what it sounds like. That'll do for now as a demonstration. I'll drag that onto a music track down at the bottom. I'm just going to play it from there because the first few seconds are empty. There's no sound on there. So again, let's just play that first of all. Okay. What I'll do now is I'll add a keyframe. I shall lower the volume right the way down to nothing, infinity. I'll move in a few frames, add another keyframe, reset the volume back to normal, go in a few frames more, another keyframe, and now I'll increase the volume. So let's see how that plays out. First keyframe, volume should start coming in. And it went a little bit higher. Not high enough, I'm afraid. So let's move that out a bit and increase the volume. Well, it's on full now, so we can't increase it anymore. I tell you what I'll do is I'll drop the second keyframe volume down. And there's two ways of doing that. You can either click and change the volume here by moving the scale down, or you can simply click on the keyframe and drag it down. Okay, so let's play that again. So it'll slowly fade in. You can see the volume meter, and then it goes right up. So that could be useful. You could higher and lower music throughout your video. There are other ways of doing that, and that'll be another tutorial. It's called audio ducking, and you can see it down here. And basically what that does is it highs and lowers the music for you automatically as and when you start and stop speaking. So when you start speaking, the music lowers. When you stop speaking, the music highs up again. So that's a great feature. But if you want to do it yourself, or you might have a cinematic part in your video that you'd like to use and you want your volume to be really high, then I would use keyframing for the audio. Okay, let's delete that audio track again. Go back to our video. And now let's look at the color tab, because as you can see, they're all closed up at the moment. Most of them, apart from the color match at the bottom, will allow you to do keyframing. So let's have a look at each one. Let's open that. We'll start with our first keyframe. Move in a couple of frames. Add our action keyframe. And just maybe change the temperature down to blue. And do a nice purple tint. Why not? Okay, we'll leave that as it is. Move in a few frames more. We will now go to the color tab, or color section should I say, sorry. Add a keyframe there. Move in a few more frames. Add our action keyframe for color. And this time I will drop the exposure, brighten up the scene, enhance the contrast, make it more vibrant, and really ramp up the saturation. I know it looks really unnatural, but this is just a demonstration. Let's close that one up. Going a bit further, we'll now try the light. We'll add our first keyframe. Move in a couple of frames. Add our action keyframe. I will drop the highlights down. I will increase the shadows. I'll make the white a little bit whiter and brighter. I'll make the blacks, I'll increase the blacks as well. Okay, so now move in a few frames more and we'll do the same on vignette. Add a keyframe. Move in a few more frames. Add our action keyframe. And we will now create a vignette around the edges. We'll change the size up a bit. We'll make it a bit more rounder. We'll take the feather down, and you can change exposure of the vignette if you wish, and also the highlights as well. You can't see much difference on the highlights, but let me just change the exposure so the center is a bit darker. This is purely for demonstration purposes. Obviously it doesn't look like a great video, but you can see what I'm doing. Let's go back to the beginning of the video, play that, see what it looks like. You'll see all the keyframes kicking in as we go through. All the colors are changing, the highlights are kicking in, and then the vignette at the end. Went quite quick, I know, but you could actually see the changes. Let's get rid of all those keyframes again by clicking on each one and deleting on your keyboard. Okay, and we will reset everything. Well, it's already reset itself because I've deleted the keyframes. Okay, and now what we'll do is we'll look at HSL. HSL stands for hue, saturation and luminance. Right, we can choose colors to play around with here. So what we'll do is we'll set a keyframe. There's quite a few blues in here, so let's choose a blue and set our keyframe. Sorry, you should choose the color first, then set your keyframe. At the moment I've got a keyframe on red that I didn't mean to do, so let me just delete that and start again. I don't want to do keyframes on the red, I want to do the keyframes on the blue, so that's still there. Okay, let's increase the hue, take down the saturation, and increase the luminance as well. And I've done this at the very start of the clip, so my first keyframe is now my action keyframe, because what I want to do is show a different way of doing keyframes. You can have an action keyframe at the very start, it doesn't have to be in the middle. So your video could start like this, then you move into a few frames, you add another keyframe, and then reset everything. Now this will be quite subtle because the HSL changes can be quite subtle. So let's just have a quick look and see what happens there. Yeah, there was a change in the blues. You could just see the sea at the back go from a grey and then slowly come into more of a blue. So they are quite subtle changes on any of these colours. But again, it can make a nice effect on sunsets, sunrises, water videos, stuff like that. So it might be worth looking at and having to play around with that as well. Okay, let's delete those keyframes. And let's have a look at curves. Now curves doesn't allow you to do keyframes, which is a shame. And curves changes the colour of your image, you see. So I'm surprised it can't be done on there, but it doesn't really matter because you can do them through your basic settings and your HSL as well. Speed. You can't do keyframes on speed, but you do have speed ramping, which is a similar thing, and again I'll do another tutorial on that. Speed ramping allows you to play around with keyframe type settings in both video and audio. So for example, you may want to make a track come in quickly, then slow it down, then speed it up again, and that's what speed ramping does, but that's for another tutorial. You can also do keyframing on effects you put onto your videos. For example, this black and white effect only allows you to do keyframing on opacity, whereas the sparkle effect allows you to do keyframing on hue, strength, speed, amount and opacity. Now unfortunately I couldn't do a tutorial on keyframing for all the effects in Filmora, but try some out for yourself. Okay, so that's the basics of keyframing. It's a very powerful tool. There are plenty of options you have in Filmora 12. So as I said earlier, I do recommend you downloading and using these options in Filmora 12. And if you've created any videos using keyframes, please drop a link in the description below. I'd love to see them. Anyway, that's it for this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to see me do a tutorial for you on anything Filmora related, please let me know and I'll see what I can do. Thanks for watching. Now go have some fun.